We're going to start with the pre-submitted questions that you guys had access to on the Google Doc and the spreadsheet. We're going to work through those, and we'll then see where we're at the end of that. We've also got Big Phil, as you're all aware of. He's listening in as well. All right, guys. So I'm going to read out the questions for the team to answer. I'm going to read them out for people who aren't present so we can transcribe it later. So bear with me on that. Feel free to correct me if I misinterpret some of them, but we'll kick off now, okay? Right, so Mr. Tomu has asked, is the tendency of the power creep in new ships, in general, new lines and premiums included, a will of yours or a consequence to which you accommodated?
Well, it's kind of hard question because we have over the years we developed new mechanics, new ideas for ships, for new lines. So the older ship lines maybe get more I don't know, boring maybe, but we look at them and well, the example would be the American line of cruisers and battleships. So we don't want to power creep with our new lines, but sometimes it kind of happens, and we're looking into that sort of stuff.
Okay, and it follows on. And about BBs, why is it increasingly harder and more random to be able to punish broadsiding BBs? By that, I mean that I don't find it normal, for the most part, that high-tier BBs are hardly ever punished for mistakes, which makes Yamato and Musashi feel off. Are you planning on making punishment, citadels, and heavy damages easier or harder in the future?
To go with the British BB version of lowering the citadels. But we all have to consider that from the historical point of view, the battleships were designed to withstand the damage from other battleships. So, for example, the new French BB line, it's kind of susceptible to citadel damage, but at the same time, they have the turtleback, kind of, not the German one, but still. And I guess it's uh, well, we are not going to just change it in existing lines, but in the future we are just I don't know. We'll have what the engineers were looking in the battleships.
Fantastic, thank you. I'm going to move on to Online Gamer, who's asked a few questions. The first is, will Zhao get HP back? She has the lowest HP in tier 10 cruisers.
From the survivability point of view, the Zhao is totally okay because she has concealment, the great ability, and a good range. But as I think you know, Zhao gets a buff through the 12-kilometer torpedoes.
Okay, the second question is pretty short and simple. Will CVs get rebalanced again?
I can answer this one. There were a lot of questions about CVs in general. You all know that we are working on a new versions of carriers. It's in production right now. And of course, they will be rebalanced. It will be a different class, and everything that kind of interacts with carriers also will be touched. So basically, all AA for all ships will need to be revisited. All the perks, all the commander perks, all the upgrades, everything that is connected with CVs will be revisited, reviewed, and redone.
Thank you,
That's interesting.
which kind of answers question 3 regarding a Lexington buff. So I'm going to move on to question 4. Do you have any plans to buff gearing?
Well, it was kind of buffed with the recent addition of the torps from the Fletcher, but also at the same time it's in a nice spot because it's needed in competitive games like tournaments and clan battles and ranks, and even in random battles it's on a good.
We've lost you.
All right.
Yeah, he cut off.
На каком моменте?
It felt to me like the end of
After
the sentence.
competitive part.
So, as I've been saying, it's in a good spot in competitive scene, and also in good spot in randoms. So, I guess no.
Okay, the next question is, will upgrades and modules be buffed / nerfed in the future?
Uh, we don't have such plans. If you're referring to the usual ones,
Unfortunately, that's the whole question. There's no detail there, so I'll move on to the next one. When BB's AP over penetrate without damage, like BB AP over 400 millimeters hit a DD and go through without damage, if it happens for BBs, what happens on German DDs and other CAs and CLs AP?
I guess it was kind of answered in the dev blog post about these changes with the 30mm armor on DDs, but I think I can say it again. The CAAP will not bounce and they will arm, so damage from 200 something millimeters will be BB. Sorry, APs will be much greater, but at the same time, the damage from higher caliber BB's AP shells will be lower. As for DDs, AP like German ones or IGN ones, I think we'll look into them closer. And how will they perform in the new with the new 13mm armor on other BBs, DDs? Sorry.
No, okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to Flambas, who
There we go.
submitted some questions here. The first is it finally time to give cruisers of tier 7 to 8 and above heals so they can start being more useful and not get slapped once and then spend the rest of the game retreating and covering back and be useless? The example given are a Brutzi and a Targo. Of course, some particular ships may be too OP with it, for example, Kutuzov, so they can be skipped.
I guess that's more of a suggestion than a question, but whatever. No.
Yeah.
The reason is that on most nations, the tier 9 cruiser main отличие feel
Differences.
main difference is the heal party and the new model slot. And we don't want to move from that one. But of course, you can suggest that, okay, give tier 9 something else, but that would require giving something else, like a buff to tier 10 cruisers, which are in a good spot. But we're looking into tier 7 and 8 cruisers, but I think it's not going to be a heal.
Okay, thank you. You have to forgive me, Flamus. I'm going to slightly condense your question for ease of language and also
sure.
for concise communication here. It's about the tiers until 9 and 10. The game is designed to teach you how to play, but then the opposite strategy of sitting back and snipe appears to be promoted. Are we going to see the ranges cut down For example, no ship in the game that will have more than 20 to 21 kilometer range.
No, I believe I could try to give an answer to this question. So it's a difficult one. I believe you all understand that the game is more interesting to play and you're actually more efficient if you push, right? And in theory, sounds like a good idea to cut down the ranges. But here we come to a very difficult situation because in general, like you are all top players, right? And majority of your audience, the people who follow your channels on YouTube, they are also, majority of them are very good players. But then if we're looking at the remaining part of the player base, they are very eager to play as safely as possible. And we've been discussing this many, many times. And basically, this is a very big move in terms of removing something that players love. This is something that we've been discussing, we will be discussing, and hopefully somewhere in someday in the future, we will actually decide to make this rough decision and maybe shorten the distances of the game.
All right, that's good.
Okay, the next question is quite an interesting one. Will World of Warships, World of Tanks, and World of Planes ever come together? And by that, I think he means a combined arms.
No. Unfortunately, the technologies of those three games are so different that it's close to impossible to bring them together in one client. And also, what a tank could do to a ship, right?
Yeah, thank you. So the next question there, will we ever get a counter to the radar consumable?
I guess everything is possible, but right now we're not looking to that direction.
Is radar ever going to get reworked to be useful only if there's no hard terrain in the way? So line of sight, I believe this means.
We discussed it. Ultimately, it's very hard for a player to. It's a hard mechanic. Right now, you just like you see on the minimap. Okay, there's DD. He goes in smoke, and you don't see him. You pop radar, and if he's in the circle, you see him. It's easy, but with the like this line of sight, it gets harder progressively, and also it kind of I don't know.
Come on, it's not that
Destroys
hard.
the information gameplay like in ranked when you are near the island and you pop radar and you see something, you get information, although you don't have a line of sight to that.
Okay, thank you. Will clan battles ever look close to what World of Tanks clan battles are, with a big map divided into sectors that will generate real goods for players to farm like gold?
I can try to give an answer to this. We are planning to develop different clans activities further. We love our clan community and we want to bring more stuff to them. We've been discussing global map many times, but it's actually not really, it's not the best, the most popular clan mode in World of Tanks. There are a lot of different concerns World of Tanks team has with global map. So I think it is possible in the future that we'll have something similar, but not in the nearest future.
Okay, will we ever get battle cruisers officially classed in the game?
They are in the game right now, and they kind of function like the battle cruisers. Like you can look in the Kronstadt. It's basically what it is. So why make another icon and the one that some players won't know or won't understand, because right now there are not that
come on.
much battle cruisers in our game. So I guess it can happen, but not in the near future.
Thank you. Moving on to Volga Viking, who has asked, will we get destroyers with the ability to swap out deep water torpedoes like Sashio to normal torpedoes in the same way that CVs can choose AP or HE dive bombers?
As for Sasha in particular, we thought about it, but ultimately, from the other side, not the Sasha player, but the one who's getting torpedoed, you kind of want to know, does the Sasha pose a threat to you? Like right now, you're in a cruiser, you see an Sasha, you don't. You know you can kill him, and he can't do anything to you, basically. So it's clear, and we didn't want to do anything with it. So I guess with the deep water torps right now, the answer is they will be exclusive on the ships, especially due to this reason.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to TW Darksoth, who has asked, why does Shimakaze have different ammo attributes to other IGN DDs? So it's the example given is like the Yugamo version HE alpha damage difference and the difference that makes in knife fights between DDs.
I do believe they are the same. I kind of checked that.
Okay, don't worry too much there. Since the secondary build sacrifices so many skill points, can you get those secondaries more accurate?
I believe that the secondary build is viable as it is right now, and it's fun to play, and it's kind of powerful, but not that powerful. Like you won't get secondary build into competitive, but no, I think they're fine as it is right now.
The Pan-Asian tier 8 DD Hassan Yang, any chance to let him get the same turret set like the Benson? 427mm feels really underpowered at tier 8 with super slow torpedoes.
His torpedoes are deep water, which are really effective against the cruisers and battleships. We see that in the statistics. Also, right now, Xianyang is in a normal spot, and it's not overperforming or underperforming. We'll look into him if anything changes.
Hey guys, sorry for chiming in, but I noticed that White Mouse's questions were missing, and there's like 30 of them, but I suggest we pick maybe 8, 9. They are right there in the table.
Oh god.
Sorry to everyone.
Okay, yeah, I'll just finish off the Dark Soths. About Conqueror's 457mm guns, any chance to get a reload time reduced to make it more useful?
And kind of the same answer. The core and we don't want to buff the 457 millimeters like straight away, and because if we buff it reload time, then everybody will just switch from 419 millimeters to that, and they will fire HEs, and it's all the same. Just I don't know. Well, not much will change. But we might look into making 457 millimeters kind of different from what they are right now.
Okay, thank you. The last question is that mid to short range anti-aircraft armaments rarely survive in some HE attacks. Is that meant to be?
Yes, I guess that's meant to be, because the mid and short range AA were unarmored or very lightly armored compared to the long range AA. So it's kind of goes from the history.
Okay, thank you. Got the question here. Have any ships had their matchmaking weight adjusted based upon their in-game performance? Brackets for better or worse?
I'll answer this one. No, the nothing affects the matchmaking of particular ships, and nor does the player's stats.
Thank you. What criteria do you use to determine what tier a premium ship will be placed in?
At first, it's a guess. Well, an educated guess, you could say so. And then, so say we guys, basically Ivan and his team, they look at the ship, and it looks like a tier 7. So they kind of set it up according to their formulas and all this stuff, and then it goes into the balancing process, and it could change tier. You've seen it many times. Ships changed. Ships went up tiers. Ships went down tiers during the balancing process.
Okay. I've got, do stats and abilities come first, or is the tier selected sort of before balance begins? Sorry, that was a follow-on to that. And
Of course, the stats go first, because they're again from the history. So, and we take an educated guess, like Danny said. But then we can adjust them so that the ship will match the tier with that we thought we think it fits best.
thank you. How much time does it normally take to determine if a vessel isn't performing as desired?
I guess it really depends. But the normal branch releases will look in, I guess, 1-2 months. Then we check the stats. I mean, of course, we check the stats, like even from the first weeks. But in the first weeks, the stats are just too. They're just too good because of the people who got the new ships, like with 3XP and stuff. They're just very good players.
And how long does it take to determine if those changes were successful?
Sorry, can you repeat this one?
And then how long does it take to determine if those changes were successful to the balancing?
Как долго ты определяешь, хорошо ли повлияли изменения на баланс корабля?
Sometimes so long. Yeah, usually it's a very tricky question, because if you look at the data, there are two things, right? One thing is data that we see, the statistics, and usually sometimes statistics says everything is all right, but the community reception is not right. So a good example could be Conquer, right? There were a lot of debates on whether Conquer is good enough or not, and the debate is still going on. But stats-wise, it's by far not the best battleship. But in terms of community perception, it's not the most popular ship. Well, but people love playing Conqueror, and they love talking about Conqueror on Reddit in different forms.
Reddit.
Yeah, they certainly do. The next question, actually, I think is probably pretty important for everyone. How has the increased availability of radar affected destroyer performance and population across the different regions?
Right now, the destroyer population is affected by the American Ark, which is right now, and all the radar cruisers with that. So we see that there are more cruisers in the matchmaker, and there are kind of less DDs, but it's okay because it's like with the release of any new branch or like these major changes, like with the Cleveland. So nothing new. You just it's okay.
Okay, and how do you determine what hit point total to give a new ship?
Имеется в виду общее количество очков боеспособности.
Еще раз.
Как ты определяешь, сколько очков боеспособности дать новому кораблю?
We have
Корабля.
a formula for every class, and so we get the volume of the ship and other stuff into this formula, and we can have the approximate of the health pool. Of course, then we can tweak it, and you know.
But usually we like ideally we have kind of the rules on how we calculate certain parameters of a ship, and ideally we stick with it. But if something requires us to give additional buff or debuff, we would do it. But ideally we don't.
Okay, the next question is, can Azumo get some love? Can you talk us through the reasons some ships seem deliberately stronger and weaker as you progress through a line?
Izumo, yeah. Like Freddy and
Regarding
shit.
the Izuma, so yeah, regarding the Izuma, we will look into him because it's not that bad balance as people like to say, but at the same time, yes, we agree that it's kind of underperforming, and what's more important, it's hard to players for players to adjust to a new playstyle from the wonderful Amage.
And also, the Japanese line was one of the first. And with the more fresh lines, we try to follow a rule where as you progress, you get a so your gameplay doesn't change too much. For example, if you remember the British battleships line, for example, initially Nelson was supposed to be in the line, but we removed it from the line because it offered a very different experience, similar to what Izumo does. So with newer lines, we try to avoid such ships.
Okay, what are the balance team's thoughts on the Italian battleship Guido Cesare? There's a lot of concerned players worried she may get the same treatment as the Imperator Nikolai.
It's Julio, Mike.
Whoops.
Right now, it's not the Nikolai in terms of its performance, but we might look into him, and we may do something, and we may not do anything. So it's not kind of decided right now.
Ships
Interesting.
like the new USN light cruisers Akazuki and its soon-to-be released Tier 9 and 10 successors are highly reliant on the IFHE skill to be effective. When balancing these ships, do you delineate between the test performance of those using IFHE versus those without?
Since like with the new light cruisers, we've seen the good performance on them from like on the Cleveland, even though it requires IFHE. But we look into the stats of our super testers or production testers and then decide what we need to do with the ship. So of course the perks of the commander is a balancing factor to the ship, but yes, we just want them to be good or balanced in в среднем,
On average.
On
on
average.
average.
Yeah, and there was also a previous question about taking into account other variables such as skill factor and how different play styles and whatnot. Of course, we're not just looking at average numbers. Usually, what happens is we would benchmark when we release a certain ship to a production test. We would benchmark the performance of that ship on. So, for example, we take a player and we look at how he performs at similar ships and benchmark this performance to the performance of the new ship. So of course it's not just average numbers. We'll look at play styles, we'll look at different players and how different ships are played by different type of players.
When balancing a ship, do you factor in how it's used in a division when there's potentially 3 of these ships on a team?
Danny?
Yeah, Ivan, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are not the divisions factor is not a primarily thing that we look at. So we usually look mostly at solo numbers.
Yes, that is correct. Although we, of course, think about some ships being more objectively more powerful in the divisions, like for example the Worcester.
Okay, moving on to is it Noi Noi? Apologies if I've mispronounced that nickname. Do you think the future CV rework will have an impact on every other tier 4 and up ship in the game in terms of balancing?
Yes, absolutely. Of course, the AA will be reworked for all ships, and we'll see what else will need to change. Hopefully, not much will change in the remaining parts of the game, but AA definitely will be changed.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from iChase, I believe. Why is it that post-global changes, certain ships were not adjusted to improve their performance? Bluskavits's post-stealth fire needs real buffs, is in brackets there, while other ships like Kutuzov, after post-global changes to BFT/AFT, affecting the 152mm, was allowed to retain its benefit from those skills.
This is because the Kutuzov was initially balanced with the thought of skill rework, and that's why he retains his pluses, and it's kind of not ordinary. But the Bliskavitsa performance right now is okay. It's not the best on her tier, but it's certainly not the worst. It has its upsides, like the good alpha on the guns, and she's the universal ship in that sense.
Okay, the White Jack has asked, will Roma get buffed? The firepower is lacking. Her guns reload slowly for 380 millimeters and has terrible dispersion.
But at the same time, Roma has very good concealment, good penetration on the guns, and quite good armor scheme. So I guess the answer is no, because she's good.
The second question from the White Jack is, why does Shimmer still have the 20-kilometer torpedoes?
I guess Danny kind of answered this question with regards to 20-kilometer range on the tier 9 and 10 ships, but because players generally love these 20-kilometer torps and they play on them because they're easy, and many players like some
Yeah, they
easy
like
gameplay,
easy.
and that is one of the reasons that the IGN DD line is is really popular, and the Shimakaze is the most popular tier 10 ship in the game.
Yeah, it really brings us to a very interesting question of dependency between how popular a branch or a ship is and how powerful it is. For example, if you look at the current carriers, right? They're super powerful. You can carry, if you're a good player, you can carry with carriers easily, but they're not powerful. They are not popular at all. And for example, if we're talking about Shimakaze, this is the most popular tier 10 destroyer, and maybe even tier 10 ship. Don't remember exactly.
Tier 10 ship.
Yeah, the most popular tier 10 ship. Well, it's by far not the best, but it's enjoyable to play for a relatively large amount of players. It's easy to play, it's kind of relaxing, and even though they're not like killing everybody, right? They're not carrying their teams, they're not performing super well, but this is still the experience that they like. So sometimes there are weird things like those 20-kilometer torps on Shimakaze, and you as experienced players understand that these torps make absolutely no sense, but they bring joy to a lot of players.
Okay, Rondov has asked, is there a plan to nerf the high explosive penetration of the German cruisers?
The penetration of HE is kind of a national treat, although it doesn't work on lower caliber guns on the DDs, but still. And we are not going to do that because they're полубронебойные, они снаряды изначально.
Half armor piercing shells.
They are half armor piercing shells, and it's logical, I think, to do to have a higher penetration on those. But as you know, we are nerfing the reload on the Rune and Hindenburg due to the I guess stability of damage that they can bring to the table. So there's that.
Okay, the next question, there's a repeat of the radar question that we've already answered. So the next question is, Montana has got the worst guns for tier 10 BB. Is there a plan to improve them?
And still Montana is kind of one of the best tier 10 BBs. I guess the Republic right now can only threaten the throne of Montana. She's good in competitive scene and she's good in random battles. So, and also her gun is absurdly accurate. They're just.
Okay, Eurocat once again mentions the CV rework. Asks if the AA mechanic strength will be changed accordingly, which I believe you guys answered just a bit earlier. Then the next question, is there going to be a totally new AA mechanic?
Yes, there will be. We've been talking about this issue for quite a while today already. Yes, there will be a new mechanic on how the AA works in general. We're still experimenting with kind of what would be the it will work differently. We're still discussing how the interaction of ship versus planes will look like and how it will change compared to what it is right now.
Okay, will there be compensation when the CV rework is implemented?
Yes, absolutely. Every time we're doing even a half major change, we try to generously compensate. Even if you don't need a compensation, you'll have a chance to somehow benefit from the change.
Sorry, could I just jump in shortly and ask, is there any idea of what kind of compensation are we talking about? Is it going to be just credits or?
This is something that we haven't discussed yet, but
Right.
apparently, everybody who invested their time and experience into carriers will get a generous compensation.
I'll just add there, guys, if you do have any questions, do make notes of them because we'll be doing some live Q&A just at the end of these set questions. So make a note of any points that you want to follow up on and we'll brief you on how we're going to work it in just a bit. All right. Sarah goes on here to ask, how about nerfing the HE drag value on Royal Navy battleships to discourage players from HE spamming?
We of course could do that, but as we said, as I said later, earlier, they are okay right now. The Royal Navy battleships, and also, if you think about it, then yeah, of course, the performance from the long range HE spam from, I guess, Conqueror will be less effective, but that won't change the playstyle of the people who love that. Because there are two types of guys, I think, mostly who play Conqueror. Those who play it aggressively, using the concealment and the ability to tank with his heal, and the guys who sit in the back and snipe with the HE. For the first type of guys, there won't be a change because they're like already in the heat of the battle. But for the second type of guys, their effectiveness will just radically drop. Also, they'll have to adjust to the new ballistics, which will be very painful for them. And also, if you have someone on your team like that, he will be kind of even less effective. And that's not a very good thing, because we'll be punishing those guys.
Okay, the next question is, due to the amount of radar in the game preventing destroyers from operating effectively at close quarters, are there plans to once again allow them to stealth fire?
There are a lot of questions about radars, and Ivan, in the very beginning, Ivan said that we're not planning to do anything with it, and I think he was just too cautious answering the question. We're like thinking about introducing other types of consumables, and radar jammers is one of the options, maybe. But there are a lot of, I see a lot of questions about radars. We don't see them damaging the population of, say, destroyers too much. Now with the release of the new branch, which is cruisers, which are American cruisers, and they're very effective against destroyers, it kind of shifted the meta a little bit. But still, if you remember, for example, actually I'm not really sure it was the same for different regions, but just before the release of the American cruisers, we had a similar Q&A, and one of the hot topics during that Q&A was that there are just too many destroyers, and they're not like just what are we planning to do with the destroyers. So kind of the things that are happening in the game, they could shift the meta back and forth a little bit, but eventually things even out.
Thanks for that, Danny. I think that was quite important for players to hear. Going on to the next question, is it possible to buff the roamer's firing angles to below 30 degrees?
I guess we've talked to about Roma already.
Moving on
In short,
to something about tweaking USN bomb parameters to deal huge damage versus most all of tier 8 tier 10 battleships instead of almost none of them. Yeah, do you plan to change the US bomb parameters?
We're not in that direction right now, mostly because our focus is on the new CVs, like work, and when it comes, we of course will reevaluate the performance of like bombs, HE bombs, AP bombs, and torpedoes and stuff. That will be a completely new system.
Okay, Claire has some questions regarding the upcoming special modes, especially attack/defense. The first is there a timeline roughly when they will arrive?
So a little bit about the modes. You might have noticed that we have risen the kind of the activity in terms of testing different game modes, and we formed a separate team that are dedicated to do experiments with different game modes, and their goal is to try to find a new gameplay experience for our players. It will be hard. Figuring out a new game mode is extremely difficult. But you will see a lot of experiments coming up in the different testing environments, and we also have an idea that those tests, basically the most successful tests during the tests, will come to production servers in forms of events or something like that, so we can show new game modes to more people, get more feedback, and improve on those, and eventually deliver something cool.
Okay, the next few questions are specifically about that and pretty detailed. I'll ask them anyway, even if the answers don't exist yet. But first of all, what tiers will they be played at? what will the team size be, and will the mode be available in training rooms? I'll just go back to that team size. Specifically, will it be equal in attack and defense?
I believe there are different options that guys are testing right now. I think there are like 5 or 6 super test sessions scheduled right now with different variations on how attack defense mode could be played, with different, once again, with different options, like whether there should be any additional units such as like airfields, or I don't know, some bastions on attacking on defending side or not. There are many different options. They're experimenting. They try to do it fast and dirty, to run as many experiments as fast as possible, and kind of try to find what is the optimal version.
Excellent, thank you. The next questions are from Twanny Boy, who asks, are there any ideas on manually shooting secondaries as you do main guns?
This is a interesting question. We've experimented with this a lot. The biggest issue is the change of context, and how much, basically, even if you're talking about a battleship, right, when you have 30 seconds between shots, still a lot of actions that you need to do, a lot of micromanagement that you need to do in order to be effective. You need to change the weapon types, you need to aim at a different target most likely, and stuff like that. For example, if you look at what our colleagues from World of Warships Blitz done, they have the ability to control secondaries manually. And of course, it's a mobile device, so it's even more difficult for them. But apparently, what the data shows that really few people are using this option.
Okay, the next side of it is, are you planning to introduce double-sided firing when having manual secondary skill equipped, as this might help against the camping meta?
It's it will be, as Danny said, it will be kind of hard to manage all the manual secondaries if they're on the both sides. That's one part, and the second part is that right now manual secondaries look like a cool skill if you play the secondary build, and as I've said, the secondary builds are in a good state.
Okay, we've talked a lot about anti-aircraft and all that stuff, so I'm going to move on to, are there any plans on changing the randomness of torpedoes? And by that, I believe 20 Boy means the spread of torpedoes.
It's an interesting question. I believe it's worth taking a look at it.
Yeah, that question gets my full support.
Moving on to Halcyon, I know this is very much still work in progress, but is there an estimated time of arrival for the CV rework?
Fingers crossed this year.
Okay, so that's like
Okay, Pang
5-6 months.
0320 has asked a question, bear with me. This is relating to the new Tier 10 special upgrades. I'm sorry, I'm actually trying to find a question rather than just a report there. I'm actually going to have to skip that one, so sorry, Pang. I'm going to move to Jive Turkey, who again has mentioned radars and line of sight. So sorry, Jive Turkey. Apologies, guys. Toby, are there balancing decisions made because of clan battles and ranked, or mostly down to random battles?
Our focus, our main focus, is and will be the random battles. But as you all can understand, that the clan battles and ranking battles are more susceptible to kind of small changes. So we when we can make the balance in the clan battles and ranking battles a bit more, I guess, good and balanced, without affecting poorly the random, we, we might do it.
Yeah, so just support this. Randoms is of course number one, but clan battles come very close to random, and as the time goes by, clan battles become more and more important. Ranked, not so much, but clans and randoms, yes.
Okay, thank you. Helios has asked, have you got future plans to introduce the tier 9 bracket into the competitive arena?
Tier 9, we've had a lot of discussions on, for example, running a ranked season on tier 9, but tier 9 is a uh, very interesting beast, mostly because very few people keep it. Very few people keep tier 9 because usually what the majority of people would do, they would sell their tier 9 once they're done with it and buy a tier 10, because tier 10 is a much better version of tier 9. So basically, if we do any sort of, say, tournament or ranked season on tier 9, that means that we are asking players to spend significant amount of credits to rebuy those tier 9s to take part in these activities. And this is something that always stopped us from doing something like this.
Okay, thank you. What is Wargaming's opinion and approach to introducing more and different ship consumables in the future?
Touched a little bit on this. We are looking into this, and there is one new consumable that will join the ranks quite soon.
Okay, we've got a repeat of radar questions. So moving on, are there any plans to update and alter the geography of the large open sea maps like Okinawa and Mountain Range to make them a bit, bit less unforgiving, so a bit more forgiving for lower tier ships?
Yes, if you followed like the last 5-6 updates, you might have seen that there were a lot of. Initially, there was this big uh, Reddit thread, and also a kind of copy on different forums on issues and problems with different maps. We've got the team who is responsible for that gathered a lot of feedback, and you've seen that a lot of maps changed and were altered during the last couple of 3-4 updates, and they keep working on it. And they work on those maps in order of uh, importance. So you see, you asked about Okinawa and Mountain Range, and not about tiers of the cruisers.
Okay, the next question is pretty direct. Do the specific ship requests of the player base in places such as Reddit and the official forums influence Wargaming with selecting future premium ships, or does Wargaming have its own internal agenda? Can you please explain the specific criteria you follow to decide which future premium ship will be introduced?
Several questions. One question is, does community influence the choice of premium ships that we introduce into the game? And the easy question is, of course, yes. For example, the closest example would be the appearance of Haida. There was a big push from Canadian players They basically assaulted our North American office, asking for Haida, and now we're introducing it into the game. And there were some other, just kind of really, Roma, for example, was also one of the very hot ships that community asked to add. So of course we do follow things that players want to see in our game, and we try to accommodate to this. Speaking about specific criterias on how we build roadmaps for adding premium ships, there are many factors. Community is one of them. Then we see the distribution of basically what premium ships we have, what classes and nations lacking in certain areas. For example, an American Tier 8 cruiser been asked for quite a while already, and we see that there's this gap in this area and stuff like this. So there are many criterias and many factors that we take into consideration when building this roadmap.
Okay, the next questions come from Flamu. The first is, how successful do you consider this latest season of Ranked to be, and do you have any plans to refine the mode?
So Ranked season, I've been getting ready for this one. The results of the survey just came in a couple of days ago on the last ranked season. So according to general responses, the best season we ever had was season 4, and apparently season 9 was this. The season 9 is the season that just ended. Was the second best regarding the response. So what other parameters there were? I'm just trying to find. I had this report in front of me. So yeah, the general reception of this season was good. The some players loved Tier 10, some players hated Tier 10. Hated Tier 10 for 2 reasons. Reason 1, they don't have Tier 10 ships to participate in it. Reason 2, some players complained that the quality of matches was not, especially closer to the end of the season, was not good enough, because there was a lot of players who didn't know properly how to play Tier 10, and so they kind of ruined the games. So in general, it was nothing outstanding, but it was a good season in terms of the numbers and in terms of participation in it. Speaking about refinement, yes, we really want to take a look at ranked, but we've been over the past year, I believe, we've been more concerned with bringing the cleanse activities up to speed and doing this part of job, so it kind of stole the resources from ranked. Usually, in general, people like simpler season better than hardcore seasons. So there is one experiment that we want to run later this year, is to make a casual season maybe. And yes, of course, we want to refresh ranked even more. We just need to figure out the remaining things that we need to do with the clans.
Okay, the next question is, are there any other changes planned for the super containers? The rewards are known to be quite frustrating to many players.
Yes, this is something that we want to look at, and it's not just the super containers only. the logic behind regular containers could also be improved. Basically, we're not really happy with how it works right now, and it's just a matter of finding someone who could sit down and work on this.
Okay, is Stalingrad going to stay in the Arsenal shop forever? And can we get other normal premium ships as well, and not only special ships like Salem?
Never say never. Stalingrad will be there. If we ever plan to remove it from there, we will provide an appropriate timely notification. But currently there are no plans to remove Stalingrad from there. And speaking about other normal premium ships, yes, they most likely will appear in the Arsenal shop in the future.
Okay, are you ready to reveal to the public what the next addition to World Warships will be in terms of ship lines? We're looking forward to the USNCL line in 0.7.6. After those, we get the IGN Tier 9 and 10 gunboats. What's behind that horizon?
I don't think I really can reveal the exact names on exact ship lines here, but the next ship line will be revealed quite soon, and the ships are getting ready of that new line are getting ready to go to the production tests in nearest updates. And yeah, unfortunately, I cannot go into more details here on this one.
How is the progress on incentivizing people to play for objectives more coming along? We've got the spotting ribbon and in-game potential damage counter. Will they change the way rewards are being distributed away from rewarding damage exponentially over all other actions combined?
So with the addition of those things, we haven't altered the economy when those things were introduced. We'll see how it goes. We'll be adding more kind of missions that utilize those tools, basically spotting damage and the potential damage and spotting. We'll see how players will react to this, and we'll act accordingly.
Okay, when can we expect individual consumable keybinds?
So that's a tricky thing. I think there were quite a few blog posts and Reddit posts on this issue. Basically, how many consumables do we have? 8, 10, and we only have 4 slots. Well, 5 with the addition of US light cruisers. So there are several ways on how we can approach this. First is binding consumables to certain keys, so they stay the same everywhere. But that means that you need to bind like 10 buttons on your keyboard for different consumables. And I don't really think it will be a very convenient layout for the key binding. The other option that we're considering is ability to kind of swap the slots on different ships. So we can kind of tweak the placement of different consumables on different ships. There's still no decision, and no matter what we do, it will not be a really comfortable thing. But yeah, this is something that needs to be solved, or at least improved.
Okay, tournaments are becoming more and more popular. When can we expect a dedicated spectator mode?
So this is very tricky. to be honest, we kind of gave a started the spectator mode is very close to proper. I know there is another question about the replays. So basically, in terms of architecture and in terms of the scope of work that needs to be done to deliver those two features, they're very, very similar. And we actually have it's currently in work. We've actually done a big progress on the server side in regards to this functionality. But the biggest issue with bringing this functionality to the production environment is that we will need to do a very robust rework of the in-game HUD, of the battle HUD. So because the interface, the UI, the battle UI utilizes the tech that we built, like 6 years ago, it's very difficult to change it. It's very demanding. And so it kind of involves, we want to do it and we're working on it. But because of the amount of work that we need to do with the battle UI, it slows us down on implementing those two features into the game. So we've made a lot of progress on the server side, but the amount of UI work that needs to be done in the client is really huge. So I would love to say that we try to deliver this year, but I'm really doubt it will be possible. So these things we're working on, but I highly doubt we will be able to deliver those two things this year.
Okay, what are the plans to teach players to become better? It's becoming more and more common with thousands of games to see players who have very little understanding up at the higher tiers.
A very, very interesting question, and it's a big challenge not only for us but for the kind of gaming industry in general and education industry in general. The problem here is that the problem with education is that if people don't want to improve on their own, you can actually do nothing to make them better. So people who want to get better, they usually find ways on how to improve. And you guys do a tremendous job in providing all sorts of educational information to players and improving them. But it first needs to come from them. So they want to, they need to start to think that they want to improve. And this is not easy. From our side, one of the things that we're working right now is we are revisiting the port UI in terms of upgrades, in terms of how you get info on ships. And we're thinking having a dedicated space where you can get different hints on how, and different strategies, different gameplay strategies on how this or that ship could be played. And this also would be a good place to provide links to an educational material, such as different tutorials on YouTube, maybe, and stuff like that.
Sorry to add to that question, since that was my question. Do you not worry that you're kind of working in the opposite direction right now by adding mechanics like underwater citadels and turtlebacks on multiple ships, making pretty much many ships completely incapable of being punished?
So what you're saying is we're not providing enough feedback on whether a player is doing something good or wrong?
Yeah, kind of like that. Like key example, Conquer, that has been mentioned a lot. It is a ship that is very frustrating to play against because, well, it's very hard to punish it in a traditional way.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that some of the changes that we've made maybe were not correct, and sometimes, for example, I remember the heated talk we had with about the changes to the U.S. battleships citadels when we actually decided to make them lower. There were like, I don't know if you remember, but before Conquer, there was like a huge kind of trend in the community discussing how bad the U.S. battleships are and how easy they are citadeled and how weak they are, and that we need to lower their citadel. And we actually done it. Maybe we were just weak and should have been stronger and should have resisted, but at that time we didn't resist. And some decisions like that might not have been right. So yeah, I agree. Not all decisions we make are good. Some are bad.
Yeah, I do remember the ridiculous Reddit threads.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the last of Flammy's questions, which is, what is the status of the proposed render changes? We were teased with getting rid of the rendering delay. How is that progressing?
Yes, it is progressing.
Curious
So
about
it's
this one.
not actually a rendering delay. It's more on the side of how the client filters work. So we really wanted to deliver it in 7.7, but we are encountering issues with how it works right now. It's also one of the challenges that we're facing right now is, as the product gets older, so does the code base, and as we get further along, it gets more and more difficult to come back to the older issues. But we're very committed to fix it, and we're trying our best to fix it. So we're working on it. I really hope that we can squeeze it into 7.7. If not 7.7, then 7.8 a must.
Okay, moving on to Yuzrul's question here. Was it intentional that Gearing's proposed legendary mod lowers its detection to 5.6 kilometers, the same as Shimakaze?
Well, yes.
That was simple. And moving on, does the CB
Yes.
rework open up the way for
Tsushima.
CAVs and BBVs such as Issei and Tone?
Yes.
And I've got one last one from Strefs. With new destroyer lines receiving multiple consumable slots, brackets 3+, are there any plans to add additional consumable slots to the older lines?
This is more of a balancing question than just simply making more consumables. Right now, as I've said about Göring, it's okay in his spot, and so is the Shimakaze. Also, the line received the torpedo reload booster on Yugumo, Kagero, and other ones. So there's that.
Okay, thank you. Right, what we're going to do now is move into the live Q&A where people can ask their own questions. What's going to happen is I'm going to ask all those that are present who do want to ask questions to go into the text channel, the coordination, the English one, and just put a plus symbol in the chat once per question. What we'll do is then move through and then invite those people in order to ask their questions. So I'll just give you guys no flamas. You can't put 5 pluses.
Well, I thought it was plus per question.
Just 1 plus on each instance. So we'll do a rotation. Nice try.
Also, can we have a while you're thinking about the questions, can we have a 5 minutes bio break?
Yep, of course, it's a good idea.
All right, so see you in 5 minutes.
And this is where the elevator music should enter, but we haven't prepared any. Sorry.
Ah, damn shame.
Couldn't you do us for it, Phil? Just sing a bit?
What do you want to hear?
God save the Queen from a Russian.
Great. My chat is spamming pluses in my chat now because they think you were talking to them.
You're very welcome. Hopefully they're screaming at their monitors.
Why aren't they picking me?
Okay, do I do it with the Russian accent? Because I'm ready.
Of course.
God save our gracious queen. Long live our noble queen. God save the queen. Send her victorious, happy and glorious. Long to reign over us. God save the queen.
Oh my
I love this guy.
I actually have no idea how the rhyme goes, so that's my best guess, to be honest. Should I try rapping?
Yes.
By
Is
all
that even a
means.
question?
Lord our God arise, scatter her enemies and make them fall, confound their politics, frustrate their knavish tricks, on thee I hope we fix, God save us all.
That was beautiful.
That was more than just beautiful.
Nice.
Okay, what do we do in the next one?
Well, it could be just me, but how about a Russian anthem?
Believe it or not, I don't know the words, but let me look up the lyrics.
He's
Alright.
not a true patriot.
Then I suggest that iEarlGrey does the Russian anthem.
I was being intentionally quiet. I was just going to say, be careful what you wish for then.
We can find a transliteration, let me look for one.
I haven't been in St. Petersburg long enough to pick up the native accent.
The indoctrination hasn't set in quite yet.
I've defected already, so what more is there?
We're giving him some time.
And then they'll give me back my passport.
Maybe.
Which passport?
What passport?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Earl Grey, you have the lyrics right there in the channel.
In order to not offend your countrymen, I'm going to politely decline in the interest of diplomacy.
You
Yeah.
gave up your ability to decline anything, you know?
Well, he doesn't want to get deported. This is fine, I think.
Ah.
Anyway, Danny's on his way back, so no need for singing, I think, anymore.
All right, but just in case, I still have 4 more verses of God Save the Queen.
Just go ahead, one more.
Thy choicest gifts in store on her be pleased to pour. Long may she reign, may she defend our laws, and ever give us cause to sing with heart and voice. God save the Queen. This is more of a Brighton accent.
Oh,
Yes, Danny, this is what happens when you go away.
Yeah, it was interesting.
okay. Are we ready to take questions?
Yeah, I think so.
Super. Right, I'm going to invite Farah Zelith to ask your question.
Thank you. So, general CV question, because what else would I ask about? The inspiration of the carrier rework, where are you taking your influences from? I ask this because your sister game, Total War Arena, has an extremely good camera and control system. Have you had a look at that, or what's kind of influencing? Are you out of your concepting stage and perhaps close to a development? Like, what's the progress and what you're thinking?
So one of the remaining it's always a complex thing. So one of the core changes that we want to bring, we want to step away from the RTS archetype and make carriers more aligned with kind of the core gameplay of the game. So give more controls to kind of individual squadrons and make it more spectacular, make it more interesting to watch, so it looks better. And also there are quite a lot of design issues with carriers which were listed many times, like the dominance, the amount of spotting that carriers present, the skill breakdown, right? The difference in how players with different skill perform on this on this class type, and how it kind of ruins the game for a lot of players when a good player is matched against a bad player and stuff like that. So unfortunately, I can't really go into too much details on this yet, but I don't know if I answered the question or not.
Do you want to add anything to that, Farah?
No, I understand that he can't talk about it. I have my reservations, but hit me up when you can talk about it, okay?
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. We will be, as we get something more playable and more showable, we would, of course, come to you guys for feedback and evaluation. And we understand that some people who love the current carriers may not be too happy about this, but yeah, we believe this move will be better for the game in general. If the class become more accessible, it would be better for the game.
Okay, I'm gonna invite the ever enthusiastic Flambas, hit us with your first question.
All right. Most of them are very short, just like this one. Will matchmaking ever include radar consumable to be accounted for when putting ships on both sides? Because many times we can see that one team has like one or none, and other team can have up to like 4 or 5 radars, which seriously seems to be kind of unbalancing the matchmaking. And the same question goes for hydro, at least in competitive gaming, like ranked.
Yeah, there were quite a few questions about radars. Speaking about matchmaking, so our position is if we see that radars are affecting the outcomes of the battle too much, it would be the sign for us to change the radar, but not the matchmaker. Because matchmaker is a very sensitive system, and it really depends on many things, on population, for example. If we look at clusters with lower population, such as, for example, Asian cluster, or in China, we have 2 clusters, one in southern China and one in northern China, and northern Chinese cluster is even smaller. And there are peak hours when, for example, we could introduce such logic to the matchmaker, but then there are off hours when there are significantly fewer players playing, and it could be, it's a very demanding thing in terms of amount of players who need to be present all the time in the game to make it effectively work.
If I may, just a bit of add-on as a clarification of my question. Basically, sometimes it happens that one team gets 1 and one team gets 3. How hard it is to make it 2-2? Is that a problem as well?
It's a difficult question for me It requires a more mathematical mind to answer this one correctly. But according to all the discussions that we held, it's a demanding thing. There are quite a few changes to the matchmaker that we want to do. And for example, the national breakdown between the teams is not working as good as we want to. So we want to address this. But we do not plan to look specifically at the consumables at the current point.
Also,
getting one last thing. Getting back to radar and introduction of other consumables. This is something that we are thinking about and discussing. Maybe we need a counter for a radar, for example.
Okay, and the next.
also, sorry,
Sorry.
I think I'll add to a question about matchmaker and radar. We've actually done a study about the effect of the radar difference on teams, just like Flamba said, and we discovered that there is not that much of a difference, statistically speaking. If, for example, one team has 3 radars and the other one has one radar, so we've looked into it and we discovered then that that is not needed.
I guess what Ivan wants to say is that correlation doesn't equal causation in this case.
Okay, I think we've answered that question then. Dominic, would you like to fire away with your question?
Yes, please. So you're reworking carriers to dumb it down for the player base, and you've also lowered the citadels on battleships to make them easier. Are you looking to lower the skill for or dump down other aspects of the game in the future?
So speaking about the carriers, we're definitely not dumbing them down. It will be a completely different experience. So we're not simplifying them, we're making them very, very different from what they are now. Speaking about introduction of other simplifications, there is always a temptation to make things easier. But we're kind of trying to maintain the balance because the high-skilled players are also very important to us, and we love you guys. And we know that you admire the depth and you admire all the tiny nuances that different ships have and different mechanics have. So we kind of trying to keep the balance, and we definitely do not have the intention to dumb down the game.
Okay, I'd like to invite 20 Boy, if you'd like to step up with your question.
Yeah, so you said that many people sell their tier 9 once they reach tier 10, but many people keep their tier 7 and 8 ships. Are there any plans on like making tier 9 ships more attractive to keep?
Good question.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, so I think it's not really about making them more attractive because there are quite a few really interesting ships, for example, like Fletcher or Iowa, for example, that people may want to keep. But I think it's just the desire of a big portion of population to get their tier 10 faster, and selling the tier 9 is the biggest shortcut that they have. So this is kind of the biggest issue, I believe.
Yuzrul, would you like to ask questions, sir? Okay, maybe not. Farah, would you like to ask another question?
Yes, please. So while I appreciate that you are concentrating on carriers and that's your effort on the upcoming rework, is there any consideration, given the large amount of work that's involved, can we see any intermediate balance work going on? And I'll go in brief here. The Graf Zeppelin is wonky powerful but underpowered in certain instances. The Lexington's the worst tier 8 by far. The Essex is significantly worse now than it was the last time you tweaked it. Now, I can appreciate if you don't want to touch these things because you want to do the carrier rework, but is there a consideration that you might want to look at these things because they're kind of crap?
Ivan?
I guess the true answer would be that if their balance will be in a very bad state, then of course we will tweak it. Of course, we will try to we are not forgetting about the production live server carriers, of course. So we might look into them and see what's there.
All right, cool. Thanks very much. Hit me up if ever you want suggestions. As always, thank you.
Call me.
By the way, thanks with the Zeppelin. It was an exciting journey.
Right. Did you ask me?
Yeah, fire away, Flammy.
Yes. Well, there used to be a mod, a really good mod, that showed you what consumables your teammates were using. I don't know exactly what happened to it. As far as I understood, Wargaming made away with it, but it was really useful. And in general, is there any sort of way that you plan on introducing team play in the form of being able to tell what consumables your teammates have? Or someone in my chat suggested being able to like control click your consumables to show the cooldown in a chat message, for example, in TeamSay. Like, it's kind of tricky when you're pushing with a cruiser and you don't know if he's running Hydra or defensive AA, and then you don't really know how to play around him, so to say.
Yeah, this is something that we really want to add. I might make a speaking about this mod, I might be mistaken, but I believe what happened with this mod is I might be mistaken here. Because I might be remembering a wrong conversation. I believe what happened is that we asked to limit this mod so it only shows the allies, consumables, and consumables that are currently active, and do not show the consumables for enemy ships, because we believe that this is not a good thing to have for the game.
Of course, I agree fully.
Yeah, and maybe that was the reason when.
But
yeah,
I don't think that mod ever showed enemy consumables, because I used it and it only showed teammates when they activated it.
Okay, so then the answer is yes, we want to bring this into the game, or some sort of functionality that kind of mimics this mod.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Excellent. Euro, you had a question.
Hello. Okay, so I assume everyone is hearing me right now. My question is about division play, and especially in the anchoring division. I made a video about it, and I just thought that last time I asked one of the devs is that they are trying to make a division like a same tier, so tier 8 division. There will be no tier 9 or tier 7 on the division. So is that gonna happen, or it's for another agenda?
I'm very sorry. Can you repeat the question, please?
I can repeat it for you. So Hero is asking about the division anchoring, when basically you have a CV of a different tier in a division that makes you basically get favorable matchmaking. I think we actually spoke about it at the summit.
Yeah.
This is an exploit and should be removed.
Okay. So is there any plan on basically ETA on when it's gonna happen?
I cannot answer this right now. I need to check.
Okay, Yuzrul, you've unmuted your mic. Do you want to fire away?
Indeed, thank you. There's a perception in the community that Tier 5 and Tier 8 are in a rough place because of the protected matchmaking at Tier 4, forcing 5-7 and therefore 8-10 bracket games to be more common. Has there been any thought given to switching over to protecting new players with a relatively small number of games rather than protecting purely based on tier?
So I'm speaking about the matchmaking and further development of matchmaking, further improvements of the matchmaking. There is a debate going on inside the team on what would be the right approach to move forward. There are some interesting ideas that we go through, and +-1 is one of them, of course, as you may imagine. And I believe it's one of the hot topics for the next week that we'll be discussing inside, and something that we need to agree on how we would approach some of the hot topics that are circulating in the community right now regarding the matchmaking.
Okay, Flamu, would you like to go?
This one is a bit different. A lot of my viewers actually really enjoyed the Dunkirk event, and they're wondering, will there be any sort of historical events, either PvE or PvP focused events, scenarios, whatever, on the same scale?
Yes, this is something that we always consider and always want to do more. For example, if you look at the latest campaign that we released, the Halsey campaign, and the collection conveys a lot of interesting historical information and based on history, personalia, so to speak. Speaking about making more PvE scenarios in the future, it is a possibility, but currently what we want to concentrate more, we want to kind of switch focus a little bit and try to explore the additional PvP modes and different PvP experience, alternative PvP experience that we want to bring to the game for additional variety.
There's an arm at the back saying, please sir, Flamas, do you want to step up?
Yeah, sure. Here's one of the questions that my viewers are asking me almost on daily basis multiple times. Is Missouri ever coming back? And if it comes back, is it going to be the same Missouri that everybody else already has? Or is it going to be just another version of it, like we have Alabama and Massachusetts and so forth? Is it going to be the same, or is it going to be changed? Or is it not coming back at all?
Denny?
Yeah, this is, I don't remember out of my head what is the current status on this exact ship right now. But we definitely not bringing it back in the nearest future as a sellable ship. It might be introduced back in some alternative mode. It might pop into the arsenal in the future or something like that. But we're not planning to bring it back in forms of free experience ship anytime soon.
Okay, Farah, would you like to go?
Yes, thank you. Quick question, following on a little bit from the historical battles, something that we've been doing recently is making use of the training room, with specifically having kind of CV-centered strike groups kind of tournament stuff. But the limitation of the training room is currently set to 3 carriers. How difficult would it be to make it perhaps say 4 or 5? And the reason I say 4 or 5 is because the Battle of Midway was 4 carriers versus 3 carriers, that type of stuff. Is that something hard to do?
No, it should be relatively easy to do. I just making a guess right now. I believe the limit to the carriers, limit to the amount of carriers was mostly implemented to avoid the possibility of some people trying to crash our service by creating
Strangers.
by creating a lot of training rooms with tons of carriers in them, and basically carriers cause a lot of load on the server, and if you kind of want to cause a lot of load on the server, creating a lot of training rooms with 12 versus 12 carriers would be the best way to do this. So it was more of a protective thing, but you said you want 4?
I'm going to ask for 5, but 4 I'll take.
Okay, we just need to look into it. It shouldn't be, I believe it shouldn't be too difficult.
Thank you very much.
Flamu.
Well, damn, I actually had multiple questions. I'll just choose one and I'll add a plus afterwards. Captain perks, is there any plans to take a look at them? Because as they are right now, there are some perks that are basically mandatory. There are ships that are pretty much designed around, for example, IFHE. In fact, the entire new upcoming light cruiser line, the American light cruiser line, practically needs IFHE to be effective. And of course, DDs have to get concealment expert and so forth. Is there any plans in the future to perhaps rebalance that a bit?
I believe the closest big iteration on changing the perks will come alongside with the carriers, because there will be changes to all the AA-related perks. Speaking about the other perks, Ivan, maybe you have something to say on this?
No, I guess you're right. I think we'll take a look at the perk system when we redesign it for the new CVs, and maybe some of them will be changed and maybe not. But I think there won't be any changes before the CV rework.
Fair enough.
Flamas.
I wanted to ask something else, but considering Fada already asked this, I'll just link to that. About the carriers in a training room, is it possible to limit only certain people, like community contributors, to be able to create training rooms where there will be multiple carriers, even 12? Because I remember in a Sunday Fun Day event that I do every Sunday, I created an event where I put 12 AA spec destroyers versus 12 carriers. And it was one of the most popular and one of the most viewed sort of an events on the Sunday Fun Day event. It was super fun. Now, I'm not trying to crash a server or anything like that or create multiple rooms like this. But just one, even with fully filled with carriers, would that cause so many problems, or is that completely out of the equation?
It's a question about whether we can allow, and I cannot answer this question right now, whether we can allow specific people to have custom rules on what they can do and what they cannot do in training rooms. Just need to check and talk to the guys.
All right, well, let me know.
Okay, Farah.
Hello again. Quick question. I already know the answer to this, but it's more so we have a definitive answer from yourself. Every single video I post to YouTube, I get 20 responses, so it's a bit over the top, saying, when's the Graf Zeppelin going to be released? Now, my hunch is that you're not selling any premium cars until the CV rework is done. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Flamu.
Right. Well, the thing I want to know about is, are there any plans to change the way spotting information is being given to players that are spotted? Because right now it's extremely awkward if, for example, you get normal spotted, then you get radared at the same time. It only displays one icon at a time, so you never know when it's safe to, for example, smoke up because you don't know if the radar is still active. And it shouldn't be too much of an issue to just show all the forms of spotting that are going on at the same time, instead of basically having to guess which thing is spotting you at the moment.
I think currently radars overrules the regular spotting.
Yes.
Yeah, so basically, if radar spots you, it makes no sense to smoke up.
Yes, but you don't know if you're forced to smoke up when the radar spot. Like, is there any possibility of showing all of them at the same time? It doesn't show planes either, I think.
It should. Okay, this is something that we need to look at. Good feedback.
And radar doesn't overrule normal spotting. I'm pretty sure normal spotting comes first, and if you smoke up, then you can still be radar spotted afterwards. I don't think it works like that.
Yeah, I think it works like that. Some of the things that we've been discussing lately is there is not good enough differentiation between the hydro spotting and radar spotting. So basically, I believe it's the same icon. So this is definitely needs to be changed because it's confusing. But thanks, we'll just need to look into it.
Roger.
Okay, Flamas.
About the UI in the port, is that sort of a, if you want to call it a problem, a feature? Is it ever going to get improved to the point where, you know, it's just going to be a click and the thing happens? Or are, you know, we're just going to get accustomed to the feature that every time you click, the whole kind of game just stutters for even sometimes up to 10 seconds, even though you have a pretty awesome PC?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible, and we're aware of this problem, and we're working on fixing it. And the the biggest issue with it is the bigger your port gets, the more ships you have, the more laggy it becomes. So it kind of thinks that damages the most loyal and the most valuable players for us. So it's terrible. Very sorry for this. This is something that we're working on and fixing, but it's a challenging thing. But we're working on it, and we will fix it eventually.
All right, thank you.
Farah, next question, please.
My question is very similar to Flambas's one. You spoke earlier about the battle UI alongside the ice cream machine. You talked about the battle UI related to the port UI. Is that the thing that limits the number of mouse inputs that the game registers? Because as a carrier player, there's this sweet spot where you can't put too many mouse clicks in and not too few to control the planes. It has to be like kind of this middle ground, and it's very frustrating. Where other games, you can spam 1,000,000 times and it's just limited by the number of times you can hit your mouse rather than the game being limited.
Yeah, it's a very, very connected thing.
Is there a ETA on, you know, next year, end of this year, rough gut feeling where you might be around to that?
We are working on it right now. And this is not something that goes like both and it's done. It will be a long series of incremental improvements over time.
Okay, Flamu.
Right, more about the UI. Will there be any options to provide some sort of customization? For example, something a lot of my viewers ask is about UI scaling. For example, people who use 4K monitors, they really struggle with the UI size.
Yes, this is something in the work as well, and something that really hope will be delivered this year.
Fair enough.
Flambas.
You mentioned about the season 4 being the most successful season. Now, pardon me, but I don't remember which tier that season 4 was. I'm thinking it's tier 8.
me neither.
Yeah, okay.
I believe it was tier 8.
Yeah, and the tier 9, sorry, not the tier 9, the season 9 being the second most successful. And I wasn't sure exactly which parameters you were talking about to make this conclusion, but at the end, it sounded like you were looking at the number of people participating. Now, isn't it obvious that the longer the game goes, the older it gets and more popular, more people are going to be participating? And if that's your way of judging, if it was more popular than the previous, is that really viable option?
The answers I got was the was the results of the survey that we've sent out to the players, and they've been filling out the survey. And this is the results of the survey that I've been referring to. And I'm just looking at different answers on this right now. And surprisingly, for example, season 4 was ranked as the best season in terms of what is the got the overall highest score. But on the question on how do you think the season was improved compared to the previous season, it is the worst season. So only 46% of people replied back then that it was a better season compared to a previous one. Well, for season 9, 76% of people said it was better than season 8. So we've been, by the way, we've been discussing actually today that that it might be a good idea to maybe make a video or a more elaborate blog post on how we approach the surveys, the ranked seasons, how we evaluate them, how we approach to the design, and something more exciting than an infographic with sometimes random numbers. Not random, but numbers that don't really tell a lot of information to players who understand the game in every detail.
Okay. Could I just ask one small question regarding the rank statistics that you guys showed online?
Yeah, far away.
I made a video about this. There was a paragraph showing how many people in percentage have ended on which rank at the end of the season. And apparently there was like 237,500 people participating. And in the percentage, I think it was like 60-70%. Like what happened to the last 30% that don't belong in the all 23 ranks?
I guess I can answer that. It's not particularly like that. As you can see in the infographic, it mentions only the certain ranks, not all the 23. So the percentage is the number is for that rank in particular, not
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
It's a bit confusing, I guess.
All the other percentage are basically in between the ranks that are shown. Roger that.
Yeah.
Clyde the monkey, welcome. You've next.
Hello, guys. About the division window, is it ever going to return back to the good old non-chat division window? Because the one we have now is infuriating. It's big, it's all over the place, and nobody that I know used the text channel at all. We use voice chat, most of us. Is there any possibility to get the old one back, or?
Yeah, can you toggle it on, maybe?
I will.
Yeah.
I will bring this question up with the development team and see what we can do.
Yeah, like it is now, it's better to not be the commander because you just press the ready button. You don't have to have the division up, but when you're the commander, you need to have the division window up to ready up for battle and so on.
Okay, Farah, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. Being a veteran of ranked and one of the few masochistic people that do it with a carrier every time, my question is, how do you feel currently about the Save a Star meta? Because I can tell you that from experience, people don't play for teamwork for the win. People play selfishly for their star. The Save a Star is the loser. So if they save their star and they lose, who cares? Whatever. I don't care about my other people in my team. And a carrier, the way the current base experience works, always loses a star. And it's extremely frustrating because I always do team play. And I know that I'm not the only one here. I know a lot of people don't like the Save a Star meta. Have you considered it, rethought about changing it around? What's your opinions?
Yeah, so we understand that Save the Star thing kind of damages the kind of the team play aspect of the game, but in general, it really improves the overall performance, overall impression of ranked for the majority of audience. So the perception, we talked for a very long time, and there were a lot of fights and quarrels whether we should do this or not. And eventually, we've done it, and all the matrix in terms of participation, in terms of how players retained, how many battles they played during the ranked season, it improved drastically. Not by a small portion, but drastically. That means that this change, while could be damaging for very high tier players, because they understand the concept of team play, they understand the kind of all the aspects of playing for the team and not just aiming to win. But in general, this change improved the experience of many people in ranked. There was recently a very good episode. I don't know if you guys follow it. There is a YouTube channel called Extra Credits, and it's it's a YouTube show that cover a lot of game design topics. And one of their latest episodes was about the letters in games, and it just resonates a lot when you think about the evolution of ranked in World of Warships when you look through it.
Okay, Flamu, would you like to go next?
Well, building upon that, the current way how carriers get no rewards whatsoever, I wanted to ask, first of all, are you considering revamping the way XP is rewarded so it's less damage focused? And second of all, showing it in the UI, basically in detailed statistics, telling us what exactly gave us how much XP so people would have a better idea of what's actually rewarding their gameplay.
Question number one, whether we want to increase the role of support activities in giving credits and experience points. So the general stance right now is that we don't really want to go too far into this. And we're looking at the numbers, and so far we think that it is working relatively well right now with how it is. So basically, even if you don't do any damage and concentrate on spotting and basically on spotting, right? You will still have a decent amount of experience and credits, but the majority. So our philosophy is that we, in regards to how we distribute the credits and experience points during the battle, is that we reward the actions that advances your team the most to the win. And in majority of cases, it's dealing damage, and because it's also I believe we had a very comprehensive blog post something like a year ago on how the economy is calculated, and there were elaboration on why we do this, if I remember correctly. And the things that bring you the most to the win is capping and dealing damage and killing enemies. There was a second question, I forgot about it. What was it?
Any ideas of displaying how this XP is rewarded in the stats? Like, for example, under spotting, for example, it could say gave you this and this much XP and so forth.
Yeah. So a little bit. So currently, with the current system, it is impossible to say in real time what action contributed to what amount of XP, because a lot of it is calculated once the battle ends. Depending, it kind of takes into the account the overall contribution of players during the match and distributes the credits and experience points accordingly after the match is over. So with current system, it's just impossible to do it.
No, I meant in the score screen after the match is over.
then this is an interesting thing. A little bit of history, why it's done the way it's done right now. We kind of inherited the system and kind of a lot of philosophy from World of Tanks team initially. And in the very beginning of World of Tanks, it was considered that if players will know exactly what action contributes to their credits and experience gained the most, they will try to exploit the system. And kind of, if we don't show it, it will make a better quality. It will lead to better quality battles overall. So I think nowadays no one remembers, except maybe me, about why this was done that way. But this is something interesting that we could get back and look into.
But I mean, can't you just give a lot of XP for objective play, and then you show players that objective play gives a lot of XP, and then you get high quality games?
Mm-hmm. I got it.
Okay, Dominic.
Yeah, on the topic of ranked, the rank 10 irrevocable caused some problems for the 10 to 5 brackets. Can you give your thoughts on the rank 10 irrevocable and how you plan on doing the irrevocable ranks in the future?
Can you please repeat the question, because I didn't.
I can.
Really...
So the issue is that irrevocable rank 10 caused a lot of low quality play from ranks 10 to 5, if I'm correct.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, this is getting back to letters systems and that the ran games. Kind of not having irrevocable ranks at all leads to a lot of churn from the mode, because if you don't provide this kind of ladder step to a lot of players, they're just not competitive enough, and just they don't have the nerve and they don't have the skill to actually keep progressing. And placing it too far away from the top ranks kind of reduces the amount of, this is all the kind of the balance between how accessible you want to make this mode and how it's about the separating the most hardcore people on top ranks and less hardcore people on bottom ranks. Though there got to be this threshold somewhere. And with that latest season, this threshold happened to be on rank 10. That means that more less skilled people got to rank 10 because they see this flag and they go like, yes, I can reach this flag, and so I will play more. And eventually they get into the more hardcore space, and they're not skilled enough to be in there, but it will take time and they will become better, and next season there will be better players. So I think this is something that extremely difficult to solve, because if less skilled players will not be getting to this more challenging gameplay, they will never improve. So there is always, with every ladder system, there is always there are always questions like this. So I think this is the bane of all sorts of rankings and all sorts of ladder systems that games have.
Excellent. 20 boy, you're up next.
Yes, I had a question about the bots, because it seems they can't be premium ships, and I had a series called Sunken History where I recreated historical battles. But for example, Enterprise or Scharnhorst, I can't use them as bots, so I either need to use real people and need their time, or I need to have a lookalike ship. Could there be premium ship bots?
I think it goes back to the question of having more customized, more custom options for basically for you guys when it comes to the training room. I just need to talk with the team and see what is possible to do here and how expensive it would be to do this.
Great, thank you.
Arun, you had a question.
Sure, in a second. So on the topic of XP for support roles, how about giving experience for giving a smokescreen to our allies?
Good question. Unfortunately, I'm not the this hardcore economy questions. I cannot give really good answers to them because I'm not really into details. Maybe it's just I got Phil standing in front of me. I think it's worth to have another post on the economy, how it works, and maybe bring up some of those questions that you guys are talking about in this blog post. Phil looks very angry now.
Farah, did you want to go?
Yes, please. I realize that the carry rework's a while away, and this is more about when it comes, but have you considered hero captains? We currently have 6 nations with hero captains, and when I mean a hero captain, I mean a captain that gets an ability that's like a bonus. So for example, the turret rotation or the adrenaline rush bonuses, that type of stuff. We don't actually have a hero captain that gives a small perk to a carrier related skill, what's considered the main carrier skills. Is that something we can expect maybe in the carrier rework stone? Maybe give us a captain that actually has to do some stuff like that?
Yes, I think so, absolutely.
Okay, another one from Farah. Go again, sir.
My question is, you currently, and it's not carrier related, so this is good. Currently we have AoE detection as a consumable. That's hydro and radar, and we have AoE stealth, which is smoke, right? Are there any interests or desires to introduce consumables such as an AoE heal? Like we had that in the Halloween event, or a rate of fire increase or speed increase, not something that doesn't affect your ship, but can affect your friendly ships in that sort of supporting role. Buffs or even possibly nerfs. Is that something we might see in the future?
Yes, I think so. I think right where we stand right now, we are more open to such sort of consumables and different abilities than we were, say, 2 years ago. So I believe there is a chance that such things will appear in the game. Not just as parts of PvE mechanic per se, but as part of random kind of core game mode of the game. There was something else I wanted to add, but I forgot. Sorry.
That's okay. You can have a couple of moments to think if you like. Actually, no. 20 boys just slipped another one in there. Go on then, 20 boy.
Great. Since we have the new night battles, will we get lights on the ships?
So that's a very complex, very complex thing. So current night battles, I can't really say that the night is dark and full of terrors, right?
True.
So when it comes to having like true night and true source of light, it requires us to change the kind of the rendering pipeline that we're using. This is a lot of technology work. We are doing a lot of technology work right now that will not be seen for quite a while. But somewhere in next year, I believe we'll see quite significant improvements in general visuals of the game, general smoothness of the game and stuff like that. And who knows, maybe real night battles will be there somewhere.
Thank you.
Farah, you'd like to go?
So the legendary captains, those are Yamamoto and Halsey, right? They have really cool visual effects with the main guns. You fire them, you get the kind of a red tracer. Now, again, unfortunately, this is a carry question. We don't get those benefits because we don't fire our guns, which is fine. It's understandable. But how hard would it be from a graphical point of view to put a really small little trail behind a plane? Think Tron light bike type of thing, like just a little red tail, because that would look badass, and you'd know you'd have a hero captain on that.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible. And
do it.
Yeah, okay.
Flammer, you got a question?
Yes, people have been asking multiple different ways of potential ways of limiting like the effect of radar, and some of the suggestions have included either if a ship is radared, he gets a dispersion buff, meaning anyone shooting at him has slightly worse dispersion, or alternatively an ECM smoke, which would basically be less effective than a normal smoke, but would also protect against radar. I've seen many different, those were just two different suggestions. The base question is, are there any plans on limiting the effect radar has right now? Because as it is in the game right now, it's a very overpowering consumable.
Yeah, so I believe we talked about radars like five times today already. We are, I can't provide an ETA on when we're provide a radar countermeasure, but this is something that we're discussing.
Okay, if there are no more questions here, I'm just going to leave it a couple of seconds, see if there's another question that pops up. No, I think we're all done, guys. So I'd like to thank.
Can I ask
there it is. Go on, mate. Go on.
I'm being asked in chat that will players be rewarded for previous ranked or clan battle seasons with steel?
Yes.
Yes, they will. Okay, cool.
Okay, we're back on the train. Come on, Farah, hit us with it.
With ranked rewards, we've noticed a sort of repeating chain. You get two ranked flags, signal things. Then you get a ship, the Flint. Then another flag. Then you get the black. Then another flag. And then you get the fancy camos. Then another flag, which is the Jolly Roger 5. What's coming for next season? Do you have a secret ship up your sleeves, or will it just revert to you earn steel or coal and you get to choose from your shop of things you want to buy?
Yeah, this is basically one of the, not the only one, but one of the reasons why we've decided to introduce the shop is that this ranked reward system and this multi-season rank reward system or clan reward system is getting out of hand. It's really, really, really complicated. So instead of this, to make things easier to digest and easier to understand, you'll be getting this high tier currencies as rewards for clan battles, for rank battles, and we'll be able to spend them the way you want with a variety of.
May I make a recommendation?
Sure, please.
So the most expensive ship is probably going to be something like the Stalingrad. Why don't you triple the cost of the Stalingrad and then release the Kitakami?
Ah, nice one. Thank you for your suggestion.
Nice try.
Nice try. Even I woke up after this.
Gulag. Right.
Go on. One question that I actually agree with a lot is: are they going to make cyclones a bit more user friendly for cruisers who are not equipped with radar, or for example gunboats? For if you get a cyclone in a Kaba, it feels like you're just going to exit the port because, well, it's not going to be a fun time.
And a lot of other ships too.
Yeah, like a lot of ships, basically the game goes to exit the port status as soon as the cyclone hits.
Just one sec. I'm checking up with Arthur on things that we have announced already. Yeah, it's speaking about the cyclone changes in the nearest future. What we're going to test is kind of dynamic weather areas that move around the map. Something that you might have seen in
Space
Halloween
battles.
and space battles. Yes, a evolution of this mechanic, and if it works fine, maybe it will replace the cyclone.
Right, guys, excellent. If that is everything and there's no last minute requests, I'm going to wrap it up there and say thank you very much indeed to Ivan and Daniil for the time that you've given us this evening. And also thank you to all you guys who have turned out to ask these questions and to have this discussion and keep helping us to improve the game.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Was a pleasure. Thank you for the questions. Some really cool ones.
And guys, if you have any questions later, you can always pop them into the Q&A channel in Discord, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can with the answers. And as far as I remember, there was supposed to be singing at the end.
Come on, Phil.
Yes, I'm working my diaphragm. Give me a second.
Phil's going to welcome aboard all the new community contributors that we've accepted recently. Come on, make it a top performance, mate.
Okay, guys. So this is a national anthem of Russian Federation in the style of late grunge music, with an American accent. Best I can. So, Россия священная наша держава, Россия любимая наша страна, могучая воля, великая слава, твое достояние на все времена. Славься, Отечество наше свободное, братских народов, союз вековой, предками данная, мудрость народная, славься, страна, мы гордимся тобой. Yeah.
Oh my god, thank you
was
for
terrible.
that.
It was so bad.
Terribly
you.
amazing. Come
That
on,
was
guys.
priceless.
Does somebody have the recording of that?
Oh yeah.
We
That's
need
going
to
to be
overlay
the
that to
ending.
the actual anthem.
That's going to be
That
the
broke
ending
my
of the
headphones.
video.
I want to see that as an intro or outro to some of your streams, please. Whoever does it, I'll send you a prize. That's got to be worth something.
That should be the
Shit,
this
I
is-
missed something good.
yeah, that should be the soundtrack for the release of Stalingrad.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Maybe some new in-game music.
You heard it here first. It's a commitment.
Yes, we'll just produce it a little better, and sure.
Next week on SoundCloud.
Next episode of Waterline.
Right, love you all, guys. Hope I didn't break your weekend.
Yeah, there's nothing that can top this anymore, so we have to go now.
My weekend has been ruined.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Okay, good
Catch
night,
you.
guys.
Bye.
All right, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Have a great weekend.
All right, boys. Well, you heard it here. A lot of questions answered, and like everything we could possibly come up with, we asked them, even offered a lot of solutions. And I hope that answered a lot of your questions as well. I'm pretty sure a lot of you will be like, not the answers you want to hear, but it is what it is. But there's a lot of cool ones that have been answered positively. Fortunately, some not positively, but looking forward to some of the changes. Hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.